back in. Just let me know when.
Yeah. Okay.
Am I in?
Hang on one second. Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about societal stigma
Okay.
around mental illness. There's a lot of stigma out there right now.
Tons.
For people that are, or patients that are living with mental illness. What do you think can be done to change that?
I'm going to take the approach that a lot of people who are causing the majority of the stigma are doing so because they don't understand. Meaning they're not malicious, they're not bad, they're just sort of ignorant of the facts. They don't understand what's going on and they don't realize that they're pushing a stereotype. And the reason that I say that is because that was me. Like, that was me. 21-year-old Gabe, that guy's crazy. Oh man, those mentally ill people responsible for all the violence. Yeah, the problem with these mentally ill people is they don't work. And the reason that I believed that is because any negative story that involves somebody with mental illness, front page news. It led everywhere. But any story of somebody who did something great, who did something good, who did something well, they didn't say, local teacher who lives with bipolar disorder educates 100 people to get perfect scores on their SATs. They would just say, local teacher educates students to get 100 perfect scores on their SATs, which would be miraculous.
Yes, it would.
But they would never, ever, ever mention the teacher's mental health status in that. But I make the joke that if that teacher had a psychotic break or had an issue and harmed some students, what you would see is mentally ill teacher harms students. So everything positive, buried. Anything negative, front page news, big in lights. So that sort of gave me the belief that all mentally ill people were bad and that people with mental illness had nothing to contribute to society. This bit me in the butt hard because when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I thought, well, I need to liquidate my assets. I need to quit my job. I'm going to have to be institutionalized or move into a group home. I need adult supervision. And I also thought, well, I didn't think that I was violent, but I just thought maybe they caught it early enough. Like I honestly believed for a solid 24 hours that I was a violent person. I just hadn't, snapped yet. So thank God they caught it quick. None of this was true. I didn't have to be institutionalized. I didn't have to join a group home. I didn't have to liquidate my assets. I'm not a violent person. I never was a violent person. I will never be a violent person. But the stereotype caused me to believe all of those horrible things about myself. So I believe that that's the intersection. This is very difficult because a lot of people living well with mental illness, they choose to hide. They choose to keep it quiet. That teacher probably isn't going to tell people that she lives with mental illness or he or she wouldn't be in the position of teaching those 100 kids. So it's beneficial to them to be quiet about it. Treat their illness behind closed doors, be a teacher publicly. So we need more people to speak up about living well, in spite of severe and persistent mental illness. We need more conversations about this. We need more education. I'm shocked at how little education there is in the majority of public school systems about mental illness. Some schools have a psychology section, but it's really abstract. A lot of schools don't even have that. They don't even have psychology. They don't have mental health. We have physical education, but we don't have mental health education. We don't all sit around and learn how to be, smarter brain people. We tell our kids, for example, to, buckle their seatbelt so they don't get in a car accident, but we don't talk to them about suicide. Even though, suicide causes many more deaths than automobile accidents. We really just ignore it, which makes people believe things that are untrue. And that, in my belief, is what causes the fear, the discrimination, and the stigma against people with mental illness. It really does boil down to just straight up, it's just straight up ignorance. It's not intentional. But unfortunately, this is where mental health advocates can improve. We've been put upon so much that the minute somebody accidentally says something that's offensive, and please, what some of these people are saying, it is offensive. I'm not giving them a pass on what they said, but then we blow up. How dare you? Why would you say that? That's not true. And then that person is, first they already believe the incorrect fact. Now they've got a person saying, hey, I live with the disorder and I'm none of those things. But of course, that person is angry. That person is yelling. That person has made that person feel uncomfortable. And it sort of has this counter effect of reinforcing the negative belief. What I try to do when somebody, says something that is incorrect, when they say a stereotype that is untrue, or just when they say something blatantly offensive, is politely challenge it. I say, well, now wait a minute. Why do you think that? And I even try to comfort them, which is, it's a bizarre state of being because they just said something offensive to me. But I said, well, now wait a minute. I don't believe that you know what you're saying. I don't believe that you mean that. What are you trying to say? And then they explain it. And I said, well, have you considered this? Have you considered this? At some point I will self-disclose. I'm a person living with bipolar disorder, and that is not my experience. Have you thought about this and this and this? And through that conversation, a lot of people, they kind of fooled immediately. They're like, really? Well, that's a really good point. And then we have this great conversation where they're educated and they don't feel threatened by me, and they have at least a different perspective. Some people push back a little, and some people push back a lot. I maintain the composure exactly the same way and give them the information that they need based on whatever offensive thing that they said. And people have come up to me later and like, Gabe, 6 months ago, you told me that you had bipolar disorder and you explained to me that XYZ was wrong. I did not believe you. But over the last 6 months, I've observed you. Just at first it wasn't intentional, but then I got to thinking, I was like, wow, Gabe's kind of right. And I have changed my mind. And I believe that will help. But of course, it's kind of sucky because it makes the downtrodden group in charge of educating the oppressors, the stigmatizers. It's unfortunate that this is the case, but hey, it is what it is. And I have found this to be helpful and something that works. And I want to give credit where credit is due. I learned this method from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., fantastic civil rights advocate. And this was kind of his thing. Let's help educate. He really believes strongly that, hate can't drive out hate. Only love can do that. And he's right. When I started as a mental health advocate, I was the angry guy. I was the yelling guy. And at 6'3" and 280 pounds and being angry, you can see where I wasn't changing a lot of minds, and I did way more harm than good. And so it took me a while to learn it. I'm not saying that I was good at it at first, but it's an excellent method, and it works. I just want to do what works.
So let's revisit the issue of schooling and education. Okay. There's a high mortality rate among teenagers and children in the U.S. Due to whether it be a mental health issue or bullying. It's all over the country, and it's a big issue. How do we start to have this conversation in the schooling system as to where teachers or some sort of professional can start getting people to, they can start recognizing the symptoms or the signals of issues such as bullying or depression or any other mental illness that may be affecting a child?
Sure. The answer is so simple that it almost pains me that this is the answer, but we just need to talk about it. And that really is, I wish that I could dress it up more, but the discussion is not being had. We know what works. The psychiatry, psychology, therapy, we know what works. There are children right now who are thinking about suicide, but because nobody has had the conversation with them, they don't even realize that it's wrong. They don't realize that it's abnormal. And even if they do, they don't know who to ask. And even if they know who to ask, a lot of times they're dismissed as being dramatic. We have this thing, oh, she's not suicidal. It's just a cry for help. When did we start ignoring children crying for help? But people all over the country believe that. Like, people say that. She's just being dramatic. That's just a cry for help. You just said that a child is crying for help and you dismiss them. If she yelled, "I'm on fire," would you just be like, she's just a cry for help? No, you put the fire out. But it's because people don't know what to do. People don't want to talk about it. And it's easier to believe that your child is being dramatic than it is to do something about it, especially when you don't know what to do. So we need to tell everybody what to do. Have conversations about suicide and mental health with your children. Educate them. Educate yourself on what to do if your child comes to you with talk of suicide. Find out all of the layers that are there. Find out your resources. Discover family counseling. We need to get counselors into the schools to teach people. We need to have a basic mental health, mental illness, and psychology course that's offered, I don't know, in the 5th grade maybe? When do we teach sex ed? 1 year before that and 1 year after. These are not complex solutions. They're so basic that it just bothers me so much that we don't do it. We really don't.
So from listening to your story and from seeing what's going on, I would think that the parents also would need to get in on that discussion in terms of education, whether it be going to the school and sitting with the children or just sitting with the professional who would be explaining to them exactly what needs to be done or how to understand better. Because as you said, even your parents did not recognize the signs. And so maybe having that discussion would help to improve recognizing.
You're so right. Right now we're behind. The kids don't understand what's going on and the adults don't understand what's going on. So yeah, we'd have to educate the parents, we'd have to educate the children. But here's the magnificent thing. Eventually the children are going to grow up and become adults and they're already going to be trained. So in a generation or two, we will no longer have to pull the parents in because they will have learned this in school. So they won't need taught. They will have learned it, as a child, so they will understand it. And I am not a father. I don't have kids, but I know what to do because I went through it. I don't want the solution to be everybody has to get bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or major depression or psychosis, etc. But I would like people to understand it because I think that they would be able to help themselves. They would be able to help their loved ones. They'd be able to help friends. My life was saved because this woman understood it. That's it. Perhaps had nobody explained it to her, she wouldn't have been around to help me. If nobody explained it to her, maybe she would have been, messed up and wandering around through life and not leading her best life, and therefore wouldn't have been in a position to help me. So you can see how this is, even in just my little life, how this has worked. I ran into somebody that knew, that person imparted that knowledge on me, I impart that knowledge on others, those people impart that knowledge on other people, and hopefully, if we really have, an intentional effort of education, in a generation or two, this will just be nothing. Nobody's afraid of cars anymore. But when cars first came out, there were tons of confusion. Lots of where do we walk? Where do they go? How do we drive? What are seatbelts? But now nobody's confused about them anymore. They're just here. But it took a few generations. It's going to be like that with mental health. The problem is we haven't started. And there's no multi-million-dollar industry that can run like a campaign about how safe mental illness is, like the car companies could. We don't really have a marketing department. We've got me, but my budget is very small.
Okay.
I can't buy Super Bowl ads. It'd be awesome if I could. That'd be awesome.
Really, it would be.
We could solve this problem with a Super Bowl ad.
You would reach so many people in just one.
Right. If anybody's watching, I want a Super Bowl ad.
To educate the public on mental illness and...
All right, that too. I mean, I was going to leave it more open-ended, like maybe I could just dance, but yes. But I mean, sincerely, this is there's just so much misinformation. The prominent one is that people with mental illness are responsible for all the violence in society. It's not true. It's not even a little bit true, it's zero truth. But it's enough that people think, oh, whenever we're near somebody with mental illness, we must be careful. And that really hurts people like me because I didn't do anything. I'm not a problem. You do not need to be scared of me. But people believe it and they see it on the news. And when I go apply for a job, they think, do we really want this guy around? What if he snaps and blows up our workplace? We'll hire this other person who's less qualified and didn't work as hard because we're not afraid of him. So this is where it's my best option would be to not tell anybody because then I'd be judged on a level playing field. I made the decision for me that that's not what I wanted, but I understand why people make that decision. Back to the teacher analogy that we used. I understand why, they're not telling anybody because they're working with kids and people freak out.
That's true. I read your blogs, right? So you spoke about being bullied on in your blogs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very important to me to have a discussion with you about potentially speaking to someone who may be a teenager right now that may be experiencing some sort of bullying, that are having negative thoughts such as suicide. So if you can reach one individual, one child, one teenager, whoever it may be, on the issue of being bullied, what would you say to them to lift their spirits up?
The first thing that I want to say is that what's happening is unfair. It's not fair that you have to go through this. You shouldn't have to go through it. And I want you to know that I understand. And you're not alone. When I say that I understand, I'm just one person. I can't speak for everybody that's been bullied when they were a kid, but the majority of us feel this way. We feel that what happened to us was wrong and unfortunate. But we did get through it. Suicide is very permanent. You know, that's the thing about it. And you don't really want to be dead. What you want is for the pain to stop. And I can't assure you that it will, but the odds are really, really good. 99% chance that as you grow older, as you learn more skills, as you get help, and as you get out of wherever you're stuck right now, the bullying will go away and your life will go on. And then it's yours. It's yours now. As much as I hate to say you have to hunker down and get through it, there is a part of that. Engage your guidance counselor, engage your principal, engage your parents, engage fellow teachers, and do everything in your power to get it to stop. But just remember that high school is not forever. It's 4 years. The average age is 76. That's 4. That means there's 72 other years. Don't miss out on those, because those are some good years. It's very easy to believe that where you are now is where you are going to stay forever. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. These are not the best years of your life. The best years are coming, and you want to be around for them. So please just remember that suicide is a very permanent solution to a very temporary problem, and that you can get through this because other people have. And all of us aren't special. We all got through it because we're just normal people that wanted a better life, and you can get through it too.
So on Gabe's blog, he wrote about having these suicidal thoughts and thinking to himself that this is normal. So my question to him is, how does a person recognize that what they're actually experiencing is a mental illness issue? And how do they even begin to start that process of seeking out help if they don't know it's something deeper than just bad thoughts on an individual basis?
It's a question that I get asked a lot. They're like, how do I know this is mental illness? I mean, maybe it's just this, maybe it's just that. And this is a great example of how we look at physical illness and mental illness as completely different ways. I'm a redhead, and I have all these freckles and moles all over my body. I don't know which ones are dangerous, which ones are cancer, which ones are a problem. But here's the thing, I don't need to. If I see a mole somewhere and I think, hey, that looks odd, I don't need to know anything other than I want a doctor to check it out. That's it. He or she will tell me if it's a problem. That's the thing. So in mental illness, people are like, oh, my son has this problem, or my daughter has this problem, or I feel this way, but I don't know if it's mental illness. And since I'm not sure, I won't see a doctor. That literally makes no sense. All you have to do is wonder if. The end. I wonder if this mole is dangerous. I wonder if my feelings could be the sign of a larger problem. That's it. Go to a doctor, engage them, talk to them, look at your available resources. That's really the end of it. It's kind of that simple.
Because I was reading your stuff and I was like, but how does someone even know? Like you went through that until you met your then girlfriend, now wife. You wouldn't have known that there was something deeper there. There's
what's really tough, of course, because you have to suspect something's wrong in order to go to a doctor.
So you kind of knew.
I didn't. I just thought I had a really crummy personality. So
okay.
I never would have went to the doctor. If I hadn't met her, I never would have went to the doctor.
Okay.
I might have gotten there accidentally. Like maybe a lot of people in my situation, we end up getting diagnosed through crisis. Like for example, let's say that I had been up for 4 days and psychosis set in, and I decided to run. I decided to run down the street naked because I was hot. Well, then obviously the police are going to arrest me because there's a naked man running down the street, and then the police who have training and things, that they're going to look at me and think, huh. This is weird. Maybe we should have him checked out. And then I'd get a 72-hour hold, and then I'd be diagnosed that way. Or while I'm running down the street naked, somebody shoots me because, so then I'm dead. Or maybe I go to the hospital and I live and then I get diagnosed. Or maybe I get arrested for, public indecency and I get a year in prison. That's probably too long, but let's say that happens because I'm poor and I can't afford a good lawyer. So I get a year in prison, then I'm diagnosed in prison. So I was kind of lucky that my path didn't involve any sort of law enforcement, any sort of crisis, or any sort of property damage or harm to myself or others. But it could have happened. It could have happened that way if she never would have come along. And then, of course, the final way is, my suicide attempt could have been, it might not have worked. Maybe I would have shot myself but missed. So somebody would have called 911 and I would have survived the attempt, and then I would have been diagnosed. But it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this way. And that's where more people need to realize that, hey, maybe they should get stuff checked out. But yeah, I never would have figured it out. And trying to convince somebody that they should know, I kind of think that everybody should get a mental health screening. It sort of reminds me of proactive care, like with breast cancer, or when you're 50 and up, everybody gets a colonoscopy. Doctor's not saying anything's wrong. They're saying, hey, look, you're 50, so let's give you a colonoscopy. I'd like to see people, have mental health screenings. Just talk about it. Be asked the question. The question that saved my life is, are you planning on killing yourself? That's it. It was just a direct question. Are you planning on killing yourself? Just had a yes, no answer. That question saved my life. Majority of people never get asked that question. The majority of people don't need to be asked that question, of course, but there are many people who do need to be asked that question, but there's not somebody brave enough to do it. And there's not somebody that understands that maybe they should. And then everybody starts trying to fill in the gaps after. And that's just the worst time. It's like trying to figure out the winning play of a football game after the football game.
How do we make government not suck at helping people with mental illness?
Yeah, there is no simple answer to this one. I have ideas in my head. I'm not a police officer, so it's easy for me to say, hey, why didn't you take an extra 5 minutes to realize that this guy's nuts? And I'm saying that bluntly on purpose. But why did you not take some time to understand that maybe there was more going on than just, this person is bad? And what really bothers me are the statistics, that I read. If a young white woman jumps the turnstile, she's more likely to get mental health treatment than if a young black man jumps a turnstile. Things like that. And of course, our judicial system, it has some problems. I mean, we need to be frank. If I get arrested tomorrow, I can afford bail. I can afford a lawyer. I can afford to fight it. And that's something that not everybody can do. And I know we get public defenders, and public defenders, they have the same problem as everybody else. They're overworked, they have big caseloads. But even if they're firing on all cylinders and they're the best public defender in the world, if you can't make $1,000 bail, which $1,000 is not that much money to somebody like me, but $1,000 is there's people that are in jail for 2 years because they can't post a $500 bond, or they have nobody to come post the bond for them. And finally, let's look at even little things that people don't think about. So let's say that you can make bail. You have the best public defender in the world, because it's some really, really good lawyer that's doing some community pro bono work. So you've got and in fact, not even the best public defender. You've got the best lawyer in the world. But now you have to come to court, and it costs $8 to park. Yeah, you don't have $8 to park. And in fact, you don't own a car. So now you've got to take, a cab or a bus. So, that's problematic. And you can't afford a suit. You know, if I go to court, I'm going to wear my nicest suit with my straightest tie, with my best haircut, believe me, I'm putting on I will dress nicer for a criminal court appearance than I did for my wedding, because this is serious. This is serious, serious stuff. But, you know, people can't afford that. We just can't afford all of those things, and that's really, really tough. And this is just why this kind of never ends for some people. And as you pointed out, all because of a misdemeanor. You know, let's just call it a misdemeanor. Let's not even use jumping a turnstile, because, you know, not every place has a subway. I've read cases of, you know, public urination by the homeless. And, you know, listen, I live in society. I don't want to walk by and see somebody peeing on the side of a building. I don't want that to happen. But, you know, society has some fault in this. We're not doing anything about homelessness. We're not providing people a place to go who have no resources. And if you want to know if somebody's mentally ill, when they're sleeping under a bridge, when they haven't showered in weeks, when they're underfed, when they can't shave or take basic care of themselves, and they're urinating on the side of a building, what more do we need? I mean, that person is in desperate need of help, and we arrested them. And then started this whole process. So I don't know the solution short of way more funding, way more training, and frankly, you know, just more compassion. We don't have a lot of compassion for homeless people. And that frankly disturbs me. It disturbs me a lot. In some communities, they put you know, spikes on benches, or, you know, spikes on ledges so homeless people can't sleep there. We put spikes on sidewalks. We've changed laws to no camping, and then we arrest homeless people because we say they're camping. They're not camping. They've fallen through every single crack, and they're sleeping outside in a tent. And you just took everything they owned and trashed it and arrested them, and that's not going to solve any problems. So we need to get away from stuff like that. We need to involve more compassion, and then we have to have the funding to pay for that compassion. My name is Gabe Howard. You can find me at gabehoward.com. And I sell cool things on my site too, like this really awesome bipolar emoji mug. I have shirts as well. This mug is awesome. I mean, you should totally get it. It's printed on both sides now. On the website are links to everywhere that I write. Links to the Psych Central podcast, which is incredible. I mean, it really is 20 minutes of explaining mental health, mental illness, and psychology in a conversational manner. And that's why people love the show, because people do acknowledge that they want to learn about this stuff, but they don't want to spend hours and hours on it. So 20 minutes once a week, we cover a lot of great topics. Of course, all the articles are there if you head over to the blog section. And, you know, the website's free. But, you know, if you want to buy something, you know, that's cool too. Thank you so much. And please drop me an email, gabe@gabehoward.com. I try to answer it, like me on Facebook. I really want to thank you for hanging out in my city and hanging out in my office. It's really, really cool. And then finally, I want to thank the Peer Center for letting me film here, letting me work here, letting me do really, really cool stuff here. They're thepeercenter.org. Check them out. If you have extra money, send them some, because, you know, they can use it. And they're part of the solution. We're a consumer-operated drop-in center, meaning we're run by people with mental illness, addiction, and trauma, for people with mental illness, addiction, and trauma. It's completely free. We're open 365 days a year, and you don't have to have an appointment. And that's really the magic. You know, so many people are like, I need help right now. They call the doctor, they call the therapist, they call resources, like, excellent, 3 o'clock, 2 weeks. You should still make that appointment, but over the next 2 weeks, hang out with us every day, and we'll get you there. And, you know, we're lucky enough to live in a cool city to have a place like the Peer Center. So thank you so much.
Bye.